Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name is Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk, where Chad and I were just having a conversation before the show started about what we're going to talk about, because this is, in other words, we don't have a guest, it's just Chad and I talking, and Chad said, well, you know, Rob, we could talk about how horrendous the Yankees have been since the trade deadline, and really before the trade deadline. I'll be honest with you, I need to vent a little bit about that, because, Chad, it's one thing where, I mean, if your team's going through a slump or they're playing badly because there's been a bunch of injuries and stuff, that's one thing, right? That's baseball. But to watch them, like, not run the bases well, not just do fundamental baseball well, throwing the ball around the infield, not hitting the cutoff, not knowing how many outs there are, is remarkable. It has been so frustrating to watch.
You know, I don't want to pick a scab here, but I just watched a replay of the 5th inning of Game 5 of the World Series. I'm not kidding. I just watched it in the last 24 or 48 hours. Showed up in my Facebook feed or something. And the Dodgers scouting report of put the ball in play because the Yankees will kick it around. I think you're seeing more of that. I mean, that Jazz Grisham play at first base where he was just messing around on a routine pop up to the second baseman and got doubled up. Who was the guy who ran off of second base and got tagged into
Austin Wells, the catcher.
Like these are worse than Little League plays. I mean, these are play like. And at some point, it's got to be Aaron Boone's fault. I mean, I've seen interviews where he's angry, but this is really, really bad stuff.
And it's been multiple years. I mean, every year we have a June swoon, and because the team just loses focus and we play stupid baseball. But
or an October collapse. I mean,
or when we should be focused when we're playing in the damn World Series, and the team can't hold it together and focus and play good fundamental baseball. We have some amazingly talented players. We have a really strong offense, which includes, by the way, probably the best hitter who has played the game of baseball in my lifetime.
Right.
And yet we can't, it's even above, like it's they can't get the basic Little League stuff right. And then above that, I mean, Aaron Boone doesn't way he uses relievers. He's always trying to get extra outs from relievers, and then we end up bringing in the bullpen. They never coming into a clean inning.
So we're recording this on Wednesday, and I happened to watch the Rangers-Yankees game last night on Tuesday night when they brought in Delvin Williams and just absolutely let him collapse in the 8th inning. That I don't watch a lot of Yankees games, but that just seemed like you could tell he didn't have it. He couldn't throw strikes.
They could have pulled him too, right? Because there's a 3-batter minimum. But after Jason Dominguez misplayed that ball, you could have yanked him, and they didn't. They left him in. It's been unbelievable.
And here's right. There's lots of baseball left, right? The Yankees are still in the playoffs, right? If the season ended today,
I mean, there's so many wild card spots. If we lose to the Rangers tonight, I think we're out of a wild card spot.
But you get into the playoffs, and God knows what will happen. We've seen that with other teams in the past. But
I mean, roster construction. We've played most of the year without a real third baseman.
Right.
we should have gotten another starting pitcher at the deadline. We didn't.
And it's frustrating when you're like the Dodgers have gone through it a little bit. Last night was the first time they started to hit the ball, but there's nothing more frustrating than watching your team, which should be really good, just not be able to play well.
And
So I have some sympathy for you, but I kind of love it as well.
Injuries happen, slumps happen. If they're out there and they're playing hard and they're trying. And I think they are playing hard, but just a stupid. And I like Jazz Chisholm a lot. I think the Yankees are so corporate and so whatever. He brings some color. He brings some swagger. I like that. He's entertaining. He's fun to watch. But
So
you can't make mistakes like that.
before we leave the baseball conversation, I will tell you I was in Tampa Bay with my son last week watching the Dodgers play the Devil Rays in the Yankees spring training facility. To watch Major League Baseball at that level in a stadium that only fits 10,000 people is pretty crazy. It's so intimate, and it was a great experience. So hot, though. It was so hot. But it was a great experience.
By the way, why Tropicana Field was a dome.
Yeah.
It's pretty miserable, that Florida
Yeah.
here. All right. Well, we're actually going to talk about politics, not just baseball all the time. Or maybe, I don't know, you want to take a swing at Sydney Sweeney? I saw a great, do you like Marc Maron at all? The comedian, actor.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yep.
He's wrapping up his podcast. I've always liked him. I think he's very funny.
I just finished the show Sticks on Apple TV. He's on that.
I've been watching that as well. That's actually a good show. He just did a stand-up special. And I haven't watched the whole special, but I've seen some clips from it. And one of the things he says is like he's talking about that, like, liberals have to stop being so annoying, because he said we've basically progressives have annoyed Americans into fascism, annoyed them into becoming fascists, was kind of the line he said. And I laughed because it's funny and it's hyperbole and it's overstating, but I heard that and like there's a grain of truth in it. And now I'm thinking about like the whole Sydney Sweeney jeans thing, where I guess she has an ad and she's wearing denim and she's talking about she has blonde hair and blue eyes, and she says, I have great genes. And, it's a pun on genetics versus wearing denim jeans. And, there's a bunch of people on the left that took it up, and it's like, oh, she's promoting, this is Aryan race stuff, blonde hair, blue eyes, good genes, which I thought was ridiculous. I mean, it's a jeans commercial. I don't think that was the message at all. But now the right has brought it up because they're reacting to the left. And now Sydney Sweeney, and somebody found out Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican apparently in Florida. And now we're off to the races, where Sydney Sweeney's a new MAGA icon, at least until she says something that makes the MAGA people mad. And the left's holding on to this idea that she's a racist and a terrible person now. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is why Trump won the election.
No, I think there's absolutely some truth to that. And I think that liberals and progressives being annoying. Yeah. Yep. I mean, absolutely, liberals and progressives can be annoying, and like I'm a left of center person, and there's sometimes where I feel like I step in it when I talk about certain things, just because it's not natural for the way to talk about certain things. Again, I want to call folks by what they want to be called. I don't see some of the things that others see, and I want to learn, right? I want to learn to understand that, but I think that sometimes, like in the Sydney Sweeney thing, progressives just fall right into the trap. They fall right into the trap. Now we're all worked up about this rather than, I don't know, rural hospitals closing and our schools.
And now also Sydney Sweeney, who is a hugely successful actress, very charismatic, very beautiful, is now perceived, rightly or wrongly, as being on the side of MAGA in all of this. And that's to their benefit. I mean, like it or not, politics is downstream from culture. Sydney Sweeney is
but Rob, you've often said the liberals, embrace Hollywood too much. Maybe this will balance things out if Sydney Sweeney comes out to balance out Oprah and Beyonce a little bit. That
I think it works differently from the right, because because leftists had sort of a cultural hegemony for so long. Conservatives are still, if you're a conservative, you're still perceived to be an outsider. And if you're an outsider, then you're good. You're golden. So, I mean, Hollywood's liberal for the most part. So Sydney Sweeney being a Republican potentially, is
Well, and I think I read something where her parents are active Republicans. I don't know that she probably registered when she was 18 and
right. Yeah, I don't know what that registration means.
Right.
Who knows? But it's I mean, I'm just talking about perception now more than anything. At the end of the day, I think Sydney Sweeney is a great actress. I've seen a few things she's in. She's very talented. I don't really care that much what her politics are. I don't know. I mean, if she said something, I listen to it. I think anybody can make a good political argument, but I mean, generally, this is not somebody I'm looking to take my cues from on policy. Now, that's not me diminishing her. I just don't think of her in that way. But we do this where, I think liberals pick cultural fights that they think they can win, and then they lose them, and then that.
Well, on this one, it doesn't make any sense, and I haven't been following it very closely, to be honest. I do know who Sydney Sweeney is, unlike the HUD secretary.
Yeah, well, that's a little easier to know who she is.
Yeah.
She's a little more prominent. Hey, let's talk about property taxes in Fargo a little bit, because
it's been like at least a week and a half since we talked about property taxes on this.
I know, but the rollout of this cap is a fascinating thing to watch. So the mayor of Fargo released, and Fargo's got financial problems. The mayor came out with his preliminary budget, and I'm reading through the line items and stuff, and I couldn't help but perceive that this budget is calculated to generate talking points against the 3% cap. I think Fargo is trying to position itself to blame everything on the cap that the legislature has implemented. And it's frustrating to me. And I think some of the things they're doing are intended to purposely create pain and thus voter anger that they hope they can then redirect at the property tax bill. And I think it's unfortunate. I think it's a bad way to make policy. I think it's bad politics, or maybe it's good politics, I guess, if it works. But I do look at it, and I am so frustrated by it.
Well, I think you point this out in your article, the issues around Fargo's finances have little to do with what happened in Bismarck last session. I mean, there's lots of decisions they've made. I mean, I'll just say the city of Fargo had a terrible week or so. We had the shootings over the weekend where the mayor and the police chief completely dropped the ball. The police chief then was openly sort of hostile to local reporters when they questioned why there wasn't any sort of more that went on in terms of educating the public. Then you have this budget stuff. There was also a hearing about removing benches from downtown that didn't go very well. So it just feels like Mayor Mahoney is struggling a little bit to get his feet underneath him. And I think it might be time for new leadership in Fargo to deal with these kind of stuff, because it does feel like it's not leadership. It's just responsiveness.
It was funny to me to hear that call come from Dave Pepcorn about when he's been on. How long has he been on council? 15 years now, something. I don't have the dates in front of me. He's been there for a while. It's remarkable. Now, one of the line items that really jumped out to me is that Fargo is going to cut funding for their downtown. It's called the Downtown Engagement Center, and what this is a place where Fargo's homeless population can come and seek some help. They're going to cut the funding so that it only operates during weekdays. They're going to save money, right? Which, hey, Fargo needs to save money. I'm open to it, but that decision to close it on weekends. I mean, when you think about when are most people in downtown Fargo, like when is downtown Fargo really, making its nut? Well, that's when all the people that wanted to go to downtown Fargo to enjoy all the wonderful events that happen there, all the wonderful restaurants and bars and museum, all the stuff that's in downtown, all those amenities that are just great. Downtown Fargo's beautiful and wonderful. My daughter and I were just there. But then it's like, well, we're going to cut down the homeless, because people are concerned about the homeless population in downtown Fargo. It makes them feel unsafe. And, rightly or wrongly, we could have a whole nother debate about that maybe. But it's like, we're going to make sure that the maximum number of homeless people are going to be in downtown Fargo on the weekends. That just seems to be calculated to create pain.
Well, and again, I think we all can agree that housing and the unhoused in Fargo and homeless people is a big deal. It's an issue that's growing. I think Fargo has become a bigger city than I think they were ready for. That something has to be done. But when you first pointed that out to me, my first thought was, does Mayor Mahoney think that people find housing on the weekends so we don't have to worry about that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But I think it's more likely that it'll create situations where there's more people downtown that are unhoused and causes more chaos and uncomfortableness for folks. But not to mention, I mean, again, we're talking about what happened over the weekend with the shootings. One of those shootings happened at a downtown bar. People are already a little bit nervous about downtown, and I'm with you. It's a beautiful place. When I go to Fargo, that's where I spend my time. But are we trying to scare people out of downtown? Is that what we're trying to do with this sort of approach? It doesn't make any sense.
There was another thing that Mahoney said about taxes. And he made it sound like the 3% cap is also going to be a cap on community growth. This is what he said. He said, "We're proud of Fargo's continued growth, but growth also comes with costs. Fargo continues to grow, and with that comes some expectations for growing services." So the idea is, juxtaposed with the 3% cap is we're not going to be able to grow and provide those services because of this cap. That's not true. In fact, it's so. I will tell you that there was another local government official in Fargo who was so frustrated.
I love this quote.
She came out of nowhere. I didn't solicit. This is Robin Nelson, who's a member of the Fargo School Board. I didn't solicit this. Robin texted this to me. She wrote, "If an engaged, albeit long-standing and elected school board member like myself can interpret the bill, I find it perplexing that other elected officials are not as equally informed." And then she said, "Feel free to quote me." And
you did.
I did. And what she's talking about is 1176 does not limit the growth of communities. In fact, if a community brings new tax value online through new construction, so you're building new businesses, you're building new communities or new homes or apartment buildings or whatever it is, that value doesn't count towards the cap. And more specifically, what the law allows you to do is it allows you to pretend, as for the purposes of the cap, that revenue existed in the previous budget cycle. So essentially, you could push the ceiling of that cap higher. Because you're pushing your baseline higher. You're allowed. So if you build a new home and that home's going to generate $5,000 worth of tax revenue, you're allowed to add that $5,000 of tax revenue to your baseline,
and then add 3% on top of that.
And you could grow 3% of that, what your baseline is, for the next. So all that new growth doesn't count towards the cap. Also, by the way, and this is very important for Fargo, because I've written previously about Fargo's tax exemptions, where they have just one example. I think it's $150,000 of value on newly constructed single family homes, and so that's exempted. I did the math; that works out to about $1.6 million a year. Fargo's budget shortfall, $6.8 million. Well, there's 18% of it right there. And by the way, not only do you capture that revenue if you end that exemption and you tax that property value, you also get to count that property tax value. If you end that exemption, you can add it to your baseline.
Well, and like Josh Boucher pointed out when he was on a few weeks ago, now might be the time to end some of those exemptions because they're about to get a $1,600 property tax credit, right? And so people won't feel the pain as much as just ripping the Band-Aid off and getting rid of it.
Also, if you this particular exemption's for 2 years. So if you just sunset it, just stop offering new construction, they're never going to feel it in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
I don't even. I'd be fine. The people you already gave it to, let that clock.
Let it finish out.
And then, people wouldn't even feel. Representative Boucher made a good, or excuse me, Senator Boucher. God, boy. Ooh. Senator Boucher made a good point. J-Bo's not wrong, but he, in this particular instance, you could even just let it run out.
Yep. And then you put those houses back on the rolls. They're part of your baseline, 3% on top of that. So the idea that growth somehow negatively affects a city's budget, because it's just not true.
It's just not
true.
And the thing is too, is I really think that one of the things I like about the cap is I think it is going to force local governments to look at ways that they can expand the tax base. And I like that. I think I don't like, when we start picking and choosing who's going to pay taxes, who's not going to pay taxes, and we narrow the base, that creates problems. I like a broad tax base. Everybody needs to have some skin in the game in paying for their local government. And, you know, obviously when new growth comes, the mayor's right. It creates a need for new services. It's more pressure on the cops, more pressure on the firefighters, more lane miles to plow, all that stuff. But if you're also bringing that value online and it's producing revenues, the thing is to stop the exemptions. I really think the next step, and maybe it needs to come from the legislative level, is to look at the number of property tax exemptions we're giving.
Yeah, the problem is then we get rid of exemptions that incentivize infill, that incentivize building in places that aren't building in green space. I mean, we have to be very careful. On one hand, we want to figure out a way to incentivize people to not expand our services, right? I mean, I would be all for getting rid of tax exemptions for new builds on the outside of town, but keep them in our core places that don't increase services. That might not be popular with certainly not developers.
Well, I have talked to some people who work in that realm in various ways, and some of the things they've told me is that if you got rid of even the infill exemptions, that it would still make sense. Like that because part of the infill exemptions are a reaction to the side effects of the new construction developments on the edge of town. They said if you just got rid of them all, the market's going to work that out. Is what they. Now, I'm open to the idea that you're right. We need to infill. We need to not just have vacant lots in the center of town while we're building more and more stuff on the outside of town. That's a stupid way to run a community.
Right. I like the idea that you just said. I'm open to the idea that you're right. I want more people to say that to me. I'm open to the concept that you might be correct.
Because I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Right.
I have spoken to some people who said that's so, and I don't question their expertise. But also, just because it's true in Fargo doesn't mean it's going to be true elsewhere. I'm open to it. This is very complex. So, but I really think we need to look at exemptions.
And I'm also sympathetic to the fact that Fargo is a growing community. It's a more of a metro area than other communities in North Dakota. But I think that's why it's even more important that we're honest about this. And it doesn't feel like there's either some not being truthful about how this cap is affecting things, or a complete lack of understanding. I love Robin Nelson and her comment here, just basically bringing the haymaker, saying this isn't, they should understand this.
She really had she has no dog in this fight. This isn't her. Other than she's a resident of the city of Fargo. She doesn't have a dog in this fight other than to just point out, hey, you are making a mountain out of a molehill here.
I still think the cap and how it affects all communities will be interesting. How will tiny communities be affected? How will mid-sized communities be affected? How will large-sized? Because I think they're all so different. And so I'm interested in like the real issues that need to be solved next session, not the fake issues that people who just don't like the bill.
Right. I even wrote that at the end of my column. I think everybody from Governor Armstrong to all the lawmakers who voted for that bill. I mean, you heard it when they were talking about it in committee. They know there's going to have to be tweaks. They know they didn't get this perfect 100% right the first time. It's complicated. There's scenarios that come up that they didn't anticipate. We're going to have to fix some things, but
hell, we're still tweaking Social Security after all these years. I mean, no program's ever perfect.
Maybe making public policy is an ongoing business for a reason, because everything's always evolving. So I had a big story about education lobbyist Amy Kopus and some behavior at the city of Bismarck, city of Mandan water park. If those of us who don't live in Bismarck, Mandan, whatever.
Yeah, I instantly got offended when you suggested the one and the same.
People are touchy about that. So it was Amy Kopus, who is a very prominent lobbyist for education interests, and I got some flack for running that story, because people are like, "Who cares? Why are you?" I just for a minute, I mean, if I could talk to you what it's like to be the perspective of the person who has to make the decision about whether or not to publish it. I mean, obviously I don't control what other publications do, but for myself, it's hard, because when you run across information like that, you could choose to not report it, in which case, if the public finds out about it anyway, and there was buzz about this on social media anyway, then you get accused of covering it up. You're complicit, you're covering it up, you're part of the fake news media, you're part of the elite and the mafia and everything else. But then if you do report it, people are like, oh, you're a muckraker and a yellow journalism and all the rest of it. And I mean, the thing is I mean, I have to make decisions about what constitutes news and what's not. I don't report every single thing I get because a lot of them, aren't true or they just don't matter. But with this one, I thought it was important. I mean, this is a very consequential leader in a very important policy area. And there was a police report that alleged some pretty rough, pretty irresponsible behavior. If now, obviously, Amy Copas denies the characterizations in the police report. But tough stuff. I think the public deserved to know about it.
Yeah, here's the thing. This is obviously something that's very close to me. I know Dr. Copas very well. I always sort of take pride on coming on this podcast and calling balls and strikes. The police report is what the police report is, right? And if there's things that are wrong in that police report, I generally trust police reports. There can be things that get done there. Her husband, Shannon, is a teacher and coach in Mandan. He resigned his coaching position after this. There was, it all seems very strange to me. That's what I will say, is it all seems very strange to me. The original response that you were given that the report you received was fake, seems strange to me. And so, we'll see how this goes from a public school perspective. Anytime there's headlines like this, it's bad for public schools. And so from that perspective, damn it, Rob, why are you doing this? But I also understand why you ran the column. I mean, I don't think that something like this with a police report, again, it's not like you were just taking comments off the internet. This was a police report. I don't think anybody should be critical of you for running the story, because you did your due diligence. You reported what the police said.
Yeah, I reported and gave Dr. Copas ample time to make her. I printed. I mean, I used select quotes from her statement, and then also the entire document that she gave me rebutting the police report. I put it out there, and the public can make of it what they will. But I think when stuff like this happens, and again, I think it gets back to me. There's also a trust in media thing where I could tell you from the traffic, there was immense public interest in this. And so, if you leave it to the gossip pages on Facebook or elsewhere, then, people are going to get a piecemeal picture. It's not going to be thorough. A lot of it's going to be people exaggerate, people lie, they post false things. Sometimes if especially people are talking about it anyway, well, here's the full thing. Here's all of it out in the light. Here's the full actual police report that came from the Mandan Police Department. I will say one thing about Dr. Copas saying that the police report was made up. I think there was some confusion because there was a point at which there was no police report. And I think that Dr. Copas, I know that Superintendent Mike Bitts, the Mandan Public Schools, also told me that they had spoken to someone from the Mandan Police Department. And at the time they spoke to them, were told that there was no police report. Now, I talked to Captain Pat Haug with the Mandan Police Department. And he told me that the delay in producing the report, this is a very young officer that responded to the call. He didn't feel that a report was immediately necessary because the only thing he was asked to do was to remove Dr. Copas and her husband from the water park. He did that. He felt like his job was done. He had made some notes, but he didn't do a full-on incident report. Captain Haug, after being notified of the situation, felt we need to do a full report on this, given the situation. And so he had the officer go back and write one. And so I think there was some confusion where Dr. Copas thought that subsequent report was somebody that, some of these people with AI existing and everything, she thought maybe somebody had produced a fake report. But no, the report was genuine, and I verified it, and it says what it says. And Dr. Copas defends it the way she has, and I guess that'll all play out. But
right. I mean, and the fact of the matter is your stories, you laid out the police report and you laid out her response, and people can figure out what they think and where it goes from here.
Sticking with the education theme, earlier this week we had Senator John Hoeven on. We talked to him a little bit about Superintendent Kirsten Baszler's nomination to serve in a high-ranking position in the Department of Education. I had to call him out this week, wondering if that confirmation is going to happen. Now, a person, she's from Tennessee. She was nominated to be the number 2 spot. She just withdrew her nomination. She was getting flack from the right for basically being too moderate. And that made me wonder about Kirsten Baszler's, the status of her nomination, because she's not liked by the MAGA crowd in North Dakota. She's not liked by one of our 2 U.S. senators, Kevin Cramer.
And maybe more importantly, not by Kevin Cramer's wife, who openly campaigned for some of her opponents.
Right. So I'm kind of wondering what the status of this is.
Yeah. So the woman who dropped out, her name is Penny Schwinn. She was appointed the number 2 at the Department of Education from Tennessee. She ended up getting from, I think, was it Big and Rich, or one of the country bands went after her, other MAGA people from Tennessee. And she ended up dropping her efforts to be confirmed. She is staying in the Department of Education as a senior advisor, which is not a Senate confirmed position.
She just won't have to face Senate confirmation.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, when I read the articles about Penny, the first thing I thought was about Superintendent Baszler, right? Because we've been through 2 or 3 different cycles where she's been challenged from the right, and the MAGA crowd does not like her here. I think one advantage that she has is Doug Burgum really does like her. And obviously, Doug Burgum is liked by the Trump administration very much. The Kevin Cramer thing, he's still said nothing, right? Has he said anything yet?
I've not seen it. If he has, I have not seen it.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting that this Penny Schwinn for the number 2 job, which I think is the job that Baszler wanted originally, has backed out. And the other thing is, you've got this huge backlog of nominees that, I think she was moved out of the committee in May. Nothing's happened. Hardly anything's happened. John Hoeven referenced that on Wednesday when we talked to him. What does happen? And I think you asked the ultimate question at the end of your column: why does she want the job in a department that's closing down anyway? So I think it's very interesting.
It kind of makes me wonder why someone like Schwinn wants the job. And I expect their answer is, well, we want to move education more back to the states and everything. And I think you and I could even agree with that to a point. At least the general statement. We'd probably maybe differ on some of the details, but Baszler, I think, maybe runs. Having one of your 2 home state senators not like you, makes it tough to get confirmed, especially if Democrats are out to make the confirmation process, for better or worse, are out to make the confirmation process for Trump's appointees very difficult. Anybody who has divided Republican support, any one of Trump's nominees, is gonna have some tough sledding. The timeline's kind of interesting too, because Schwinn is withdrawn. Her nomination, I believe, was moved out of committee to the full Senate in June. Baszler's was moved out in May, so she's even been sitting longer. And she was, when we had Senator Hoeven on, he was talking about, bipartisan support. She would be somebody who I think would draw a lot of bipartisan support. You look at her track record, you look at her credentials, there's not a lot to grab on. She had some personal stuff, the DUI and the domestic situation, that are not great. But there's really, if you want to try to scuttle her nomination from a pragmatic political position, there's not a lot to grab onto there.
No. I think a couple things. One, I think under a normal, if there's such a thing of normal political environment, Baszler would be getting Democrat support, but she got 0 Democrat support in committee, because it's just Republicans yes, Democrats no on all these different nominees. I think the other thing that's different between Baszler and Schwinn is Schwinn was getting public, people going after her very publicly. That's not happening here. That's not happening at all. That I think Baszler has the ability to fly sort of under the radar a little bit more, unless Kevin Cramer decides that he wants to put a kibosh on this. But he said nothing up to this point, which doesn't lead me to believe that he's all that interested.
I mean, because again, you're right. She does have supporters. I perceive Hoven as a supporter. He was quoted in this release. Burgum is obviously a supporter. Kelly Armstrong was a supporter. Maybe he just doesn't want to. Maybe he's just chosen silence as his protest. And maybe that's all it'll be. But it's an interesting situation. And it has, I mean, it's hard to say that she's I mean, because they're all taking forever to get these appointments. So maybe hers isn't that unusual. But
I think the other thing that was interesting, you shared I think it was the Atlantic article about unfreezing this money. And it was a lot about North Dakota in that thing. And one of the quotes in the article is a superintendent, I think it was Wade Trottier, asked Baszler, why do you still want this job if this is the kind of stuff the department is doing? And Baszler basically said, because they need my voice there. They need my voice to sort of somebody who understands education. And I think that's a good reason to want the job. If I were her, I still wouldn't want it. But if that's how she sees sort of her role as somebody who understands what's actually happening in schools, that's a pretty good reason to want it.
It really is. Let's finish out talking about porn. How unusual it was too that I spent a not insignificant amount of time this last week visiting porn websites.
Just another week in the life of Rockport.
Because our legislature, we had a new law go into effect for age ID. So supposedly these websites that are above a certain amount of traffic, which all the ones I've visited are very prominent. I'm not gonna list the names of all the websites. Pornhub was one. I mean, that's kind of a big one that I think a lot of people know. But I tried several. And if we're thinking that this age verification is going to stop anybody from accessing porn on the internet, you're kidding yourself. Our reporter Peyton Haug had a story saying that Pornhub had put up, if you visited from North Dakota, you got a message saying, hey, you can't access because there's age verification and we don't want to participate in that. But the thing is, like, I got that when I visited from my phone on my home Wi-Fi. But when I switched over to my cellular data, I didn't see that message at all. I went straight into the website, I guess, like you would normally. And then when I tried it from my desktop and my laptop, it was the same thing. I never saw that message at all. And I didn't see that message on any other website. So, and the thing about North Dakota's law is what it does is it creates a legal liability. So it's not like something that the state of North Dakota is going to enforce. What they have said in the law is that if these websites don't implement an age ID system that complies with the law, then they are legally liable and can be sued, I guess, for harm done to minors or what have you. So I mean, there's that. So it's not like there's bureaucrats in the state capitol building who are going to be cracking down on these porn websites. It's going to come through the civil courts and lawyers filing lawsuits, and we're just days into this. So maybe eventually some of this will change, but as of right now, this isn't stopping anything.
So the first thing I would say is I hope the forum's antivirus is up to date between you and Peyton spending so much time on porn sites this week. We had Steve Swantek on to talk about this, and I think that the goal is super noble, but I think he would even admit the implementation is the part that's really, really difficult. So yeah, I think this is one of the points you made in your column. Parents are going to have to continue to monitor their kids' internet behavior because the state of North Dakota is not shutting it down.
Well, Governor Armstrong supported it. In fact, I remember he brought this up out of the blue during his gubernatorial campaign when we had the debate. I think it was in the primary between him and Merrill, or not the primary, in the general between him and Merrill Pepcorn. And out of the blue, like I didn't even consider that this would be on his radar at all, but he brought it up. And I agree with you that it's a noble goal. I don't want kids accessing porn. Adults, I don't care. And as long as everybody in the porn, it's consensual and all that stuff, I don't really care. It's not my business. I don't mind the idea, but I think the idea of trying to regulate the internet or the content on the internet, especially from the state level, it's just, I mean, this is probably the best way we create a liability for them where they could be sued. But even that, I think could probably, and I'm not a lawyer, but what if these websites just organize in jurisdictions that are beyond the reach of the American courts? what are you going to do? And then do you turn around and do you create legal liability for internet service providers, where if they allow access, is that a road that we want to go down? Because how quickly does that turn into, well, we don't want you to look at porn. We also don't want you to look at fake news, criticizes Donald Trump.
So, but
fake-
haven't gambling sites figured this out?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me because I'm not a gambler, so it's not
Right.
like a lot of time. But I mean, my understanding is even when it was illegal, like you could still access gambling, offshore gambling websites and gamble. And I think the choke point they tried to implement for that is you have to be able to pay them, and they have to be able to send you your winnings if you win, which you shouldn't gamble because mostly you don't win. There's a reason why they have all sorts of money, and it's because most people don't win. Anyway.
Yeah, there's a reason why casinos aren't shutting down.
Yeah. It's an industry built on people's innumeracy. But I guess it's, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that our ban on online gambling. In fact, I think one of the arguments in favor of legalizing it was everybody was doing it anyway.
Sure.
So why not just legalize it and tax it and bring it out into the daylight? And that's a compelling argument. But the thing in here, I mean, pornography has First Amendment protections. This is legal. There are plenty of companies in the United States of America that are engaged in this and make all kinds of money from it. So it's legal already in North Dakota. It's not like gambling where it's illegal. Pornography is legal in North Dakota. What's not legal is for minors to access it. But the problem we have there is, and I really think that maybe I think pursuing some of this distracts from the parents' responsibility to be in front of this. We're kind of an Android household. My son has a Chromebook. The rest of my children are basically adults or, but I mean, for my children who still live at home, I use a Google Wi-Fi mesh network that allows me to apply a filter. And then also on their devices, I use Family Link, where I can not only control screen time and stuff like that, which is great. So I can set, they're not usable certain hours of the day. They're not usable after they've been used for a certain amount of time in a day, but you can also set content restrictions at that level. And that works really well for us. And then also I just pay attention to my kids and what they're doing.
Yeah, that seems like the best option. So mom and dad, if you think the state's going to keep your kids off of porn, they're not, but they're going to keep you from having a cell phone during the day.
Yeah. Which you support, by the way. You think that's...
I do. I still support it, even though I think that, like the property tax thing, it is going to be bumpy. Yeah. It's going to be super bumpy, the implementation of this thing.
I think some of the stuff, I think we could let the kids use their phones during like lunch and stuff. I think some of that stuff could be rolled back, but we'll see how it works. I'm not looking forward to coordinating pickups for my daughter from high school this year.
Yeah, listen, the people who are against this are by and large parents.
We did all of that by text message, and it's going to be far less convenient now. So
I think it's good that the secretary of your kids' school will get to know you so well as you're calling and coordinating rides.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're gonna end.
Well, I want to give a promo to something. I listened to the third installment of the $740,000 question. We're going to talk about it more next week, but I would encourage people to listen to it. The fact that post-COVID that we have access to committee hearings and recordings and all that makes this very well done podcast possible. Right. And I think we have a lot of legislators who are still used to this environment where you can wheel and deal in a committee room with only a couple people in there and nobody would hear about it or know about it. We have so much more transparency in North Dakota than we did even 8 years ago. It's really, really amazing. But let's talk about it next week because I think Matt Fern did a great job on this thing.
Matt, of course, is our producer on the show. $740,000 question, the episodes of which have been available in the Plain Talk podcast feed. So if you subscribe to us, you should already be getting them that way. They're on our YouTube channel. You could get them that way as well. So absolutely, it's the final installment. It's a little bit longer than the other episodes. I will admit I have not listened to it yet. I haven't had time to. Matt just dropped it this week. I haven't had time to tune in and listen to it yet, but I'm looking forward. The first two episodes that I listened to were very well done. I don't doubt that this third is better, and we'll wrap that up on a show next week. But definitely take the time to listen to it, because again, I think the most important thing here is maybe you don't care about film grants, but you should care about how our state government does business sometimes. And this is very, because a lot of the tactics, a lot of the whatever apply to not just the film grants.
Right. And I think that there's going to be people who listen to episode 3 and say, oh, yeah, this is the way this works. Those people need to ask themselves, is this the way this should work?
Should it be? Should it be the way
Right.
it works? That's maybe the most important question. Right. All right, we're going to put it in there. Follow us on all the social media things, at Plain Talk ND. We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on TikTok, all the things. Follow us there. Really appreciate it. I appreciate all you guys listening. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
J-Bo.
J-Bo's not wrong.